Okay. Okay. So you see what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I'd like to start with a question. And the question is that I hope we can address by the time we get to the end, or at least have some feel for, is will the real Babylon please arise, or please stand up? Almost sounds like a prayer. With a real Babylon, please arise.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I'd like to pray that
No.
necessarily, Bruce.
Yeah, I know. That's as I said, maybe we need to change that title a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
How
well,
about show itself,
No, reveal so that we may,
reveal itself?
yes, deal with
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's too late for me to change the typing now. But, yeah. So, okay. Well, let's do a quick review of where we were last week, comparing 17 and 18. And just you kind of spout off what, just tell me what you remember about what we learned about Revelation 17, 18 last week. I mean, for example, we ended up with a test. One of the questions is 17 describing an ecclesiastical Babylon and 18 a commercial Babylon, or are they the same? What did we decide? What is it? What does the Word of God seem to strongly support?
Essentially the same.
The same.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah. So
Same.
the same. And what do we find out about Babylon? Just give me some of the names that we saw in 17 and 18. She's
Great
a
harlot city.
great harlot. Okay, so she's a great harlot. What else?
That great city.
She's a great city. Good, good. Definitely want to get that one out there. So
Babylon the Great.
Babylon the Great. Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of covering them pretty quickly here. Did someone say mother of harlots and abominations? Because we'll talk about that a little more in just a second. Where does she sit, according to what we read last week?
On 7 waters.
Many waters.
And where
On
else?
many waters.
Many
On 7
waters,
hills.
right? And what are the many waters? What did we determine? The waters that she
Oh.
sees.
Peoples and nations.
Nations,
Yeah.
peoples.
So she's got, what does it say about her influence?
Global.
Fine.
So she's local, she's a city, but she's global, right?
Mhm.
Got a global influence. I mean, it's kind of like, if I said to you, Wall Street, well,
Mhm.
you might think of the system, right? Economic system, Wall Street. But Wall Street has a street name too. So it's a local with a systematic effect. Okay. So what's she have in her hand? We'll kind of knock these off really fast.
Gold cup.
Got a cup. What's she doing with that cup to the nations?
Drunk off the blood of those.
Okay. What else?
Full of abominations and unclean things of her immorality.
Okay.
Mhm.
She's all right. And is
she-
she intoxicating the,
Yes,
the
and
nations?
intoxicates the nations too.
Yeah.
They are drunk
The drunk, right?
with her cup. Yeah.
Intoxicating the flesh of fallen mankind is basically what she's doing.
Right.
So what did she do with the saints? What was her interaction with the saints? Remember anything?
She sliced them.
Okay. So she's persecuting the saints. Babylon, I just wrote here, Babylon hates those who love Jesus. I think that's a legitimate statement. We didn't see that last week, but I think that's a fair statement. How's she destroyed? By what?
Fire. By the kings. And,
Okay. And I thought I heard you say fire. I just went and put that up.
I did
Fire,
the
yeah.
fire, yeah.
How complete was her destruction? How complete?
Complete. Oh,
Complete, right? Is she ever going to be inhabited again?
Nope.
Never.
no.
Oh, okay. Keep these things in mind because we're going to be looking at them tonight. What was her punishment? How was it meted out? According to what?
The will of God.
Okay.
God decreed, and then the nations the beast and his 10 kingdoms destroy her.
So she's being punished then, though, according to what? According to her
Oh, she's
her
times.
deeds,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
we saw double and so forth. Yeah. So how did John illustrate her fall? Yeah, dramatic illustration of her fall.
The millstone, a big
Millstone.
angel. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the idea of that? Millstone.
Straight down, not coming up.
Not gonna bob up, is it? So it's not like a carp when you're fishing, that's for sure. And what are God's people told to do as a result of
Yeah, come out of her.
come out of her, right?
Yep.
Okay, come out of her, yeah. And what's the reaction of heaven
Yeah.
to the fall?
Rejoicing.
Okay. And what about the earth dwellers? What are they doing?
Whoa.
Yeah, so they're mourning, right? So, and what's the word that we talked about last week, and it's in 17:5, and it's some people think it's part of her description,
Oh, yeah. Mystery.
history, right? But we determined that's not part of her description. It's something that is explained, right? Actually, we see that in some of the other passages. So, but what's the important point about that? I just made a little note here. If we think it's mystical or symbolic at that point in time, we've got an open invitation to go mystical or allegorical on Babylon. But mystical is not what, mystery is implying. Is that a fair statement? All right.
I said, yeah.
We're going to look at a lot more. We're going to look at these kind of over again, particularly when we get to Jeremiah. We'll probably spend most of the time in Jeremiah. I just wrote this little quote down because Mark mentioned about the Old Testament. I like it, what he said. Unless you understand what prior scripture says about Babylon, unless you have a chorus of the Old Testament singing, I like that, singing in your ears as you read these chapters, you won't be able to make head or tails of these chapters. They won't make much sense. So the Old Testament is going to really help us, I think, begin to glean the truths that are revealed in the New Testament. And we'll start out then. In fact, I kind of was thinking about, well, we got a judge here. So I'm going to call some witnesses to the stand. I'm going to call prophets, call Moses, then I'm going to call Isaiah, then we'll call Jeremiah, and we'll end up with a strange prophecy from Zechariah. So we'll see what those witnesses tell us. Okay, so David, I'm just looking at the line of people in the thing, and if you could read this for me, read it for us. Genesis 10, 6 through 10 is what we'll start on.
Okay, 6 through 10. The sons of Ham. Is that what you wanted me to start on?
Yeah, yes, sir.
This-
Yeah, yeah.
The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Seba, and Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteka. And the sons of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Now, Cush became the father of Nimrod. He became a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
Okay, thank you. So we're focusing in on one individual in this section. We're not going to look at the other names. David did a great job pronouncing them. That's why I selected him. I knew he would. And so the name that pops up in verse 8, what's that name?
Nimrod.
Nimrod. Anybody look up what that means?
I know what it means today.
Not everybody agrees. Brian said it last night in leaders meeting that it means to rebel or rebellion, but not everybody, says that. So I'm going to just let us look at what he looks like and see if we can pick out, discern his character. What's the description of this man? What's the description? What's repeated about him, particularly? Always looking for repeated.
Mighty,
Mighty.
mighty, and mighty.
Yeah, so he's mighty. He's a mighty one of the earth. And what else is he mighty?
Mighty hunter.
He's a mighty hunter. I mean, back then there were a lot of animals. I mean, it wasn't all desert back then, probably. So there were lots of animals, and he was a mighty hunter. And what's the specific expression that's added to that? A mighty hunter, what?
Before the Lord.
So before the Lord, and he repeats that, doesn't he? What does that sound? What do you think he's saying there?
Hmm.
Arrogant or prideful.
That definitely is one of the things that enters my mind. I mean, you could just say it's just something the Lord sees him, but the very fact that they repeated it like that makes you think something along what the lines of what you said. Yeah.
Mhm.
What's he gain his fame for? It's a redundant question, but
Hunting.
His kingdom. The battle.
well, why is he? But why? What prior to that? What does he? What's his claim to fame? You've already said it, basically.
Yeah, mighty one on the earth is how he's first described.
Yeah.
So this is not simply in a local area, but
Okay. So, but he got his name primarily right by hunting, right? So he
Mhm.
was a mighty hunter before the Lord, and in verse 10, what power does he seem to? Not it doesn't seem to. What power does he claim at this juncture?
If he's got a kingdom, he's a king.
So he's a king, right?
Yeah.
So have we ever seen kingdom before in the Bible?
yeah.
This is the first use of kingdom in the
So
Bible.
Bruce,
Oh,
Bruce got a question.
from
there.
Genesis, yeah.
Yes.
So I've always thought and been taught sometimes the mighty hunter was also was hunter of men, not necessarily animals, because he was a
Hmm.
leader, and he wouldn't go out as a leader to hunt animals. He'd get people to hunt men down.
You know, it
Was that
doesn't say that. I can't argue with that.
Hmm.
You know, so, but letting it say what it says, I couldn't say for sure. But
Okay.
whatever it is, it gained him some renown so that he becomes the king. And what's he the king of?
Babel.
Babel. What does the word Babel mean?
Confusion.
Yeah, it means confusion, right? What's the synonym for Babel? We'll run into it in a little bit. Same word,
Babel.
Babylon.
Babylon. In
Babylon.
fact, most of the time in the Bible, it's going to be translated Babylon, and you can translate this
Hmm.
Babylon. It's the same Hebrew word. So where is his kingdom of Babel?
The land of Shinar.
So it's in the land of Shinar. I've got a little picture of him here. At least the artist didn't think there was a man there. So, so there's an animal, but here he is as a king. Now, yeah, I've just got the synonym here for Babel is equivalent of Babylon. So one of the things about chapter 10 and chapter 11, anybody know what's interesting about those two chapters in terms of the chronological order? Like chapter 10 is the table of nations.
Mhm.
They're reversed in chronology.
Yeah, feels right. So we'll look at that second one and see what because 10 describes what happens in chapter 11, 1 through 9. So Phil, why don't you go ahead and read 1 through 9 for us, Genesis 11.
Sure. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. And it came about as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach unto heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise, we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth.
Okay, thank you. So beginning at the verse 1, what's the significant fact there? Straightforward.
Same language.
Same language, right? And what?
Same words.
And even the same words. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So what now in verse 2, they begin to journey east. Let me throw a map up here. Whoops, I don't want to do that yet. So they begin to journey east. And where do they journey to?
I know.
I know.
To Shinar, right? We've seen Shinar at the end of chapter 10, or at least the part we were looking at. So what was the problem with their journey and settling there? I didn't ask that, but they settle in Shinar. What's the problem with that? The root problem?
They were
They're
not
not-
following the Lord's instruction to Adam and Eve to fill the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. So
go.
so go ahead and read Genesis 9:1, Tobin. You see it? You must be on mute.
There we go.
There we
Is
go.
that what you have pulled up there?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one right there. 9:1.
Now the whole earth used the same language and the
Oh,
same.
The
No,
blue one above that.
Oh,
The
gotcha,
blue.
9:1. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth."
Okay, so how many commands in that passage?
3.
Got 3 commands. Which one had they broken for sure? They seem to be breaking for sure.
The fill of the earth.
Fill the earth, right?
So you're all staying in one place.
So their plan is described in the next verses, and what's the progression that you see in verses 3 and 4? Do you see a progression going from 3 to 4? What do they want to do? What are they going to do first?
You're gonna start making bricks,
They're going to make bricks,
and then you're gonna build a tower.
and what
for
are
the
they going to
city.
make? Or
You're gonna build a tower.
And a city.
City.
okay, so a city and
City
Yeah.
so make bricks, make a tower, a city and tower, build it. And what's the third thing they want to make?
A name.
A name. So they want to make a name for themselves. Who should they have sought to make a name for?
The Lord.
The Lord, right? So what do we begin to see right out of the, shoot on this particular description of these men? What are they
How
doing?
Even got out.
And they're stopping their spread
Okay,
and
Pride,
going to,
pride, rebellion, disobedience.
yeah, all those things, yeah. So they started over here somewhere, maybe Ararat, Mount Ararat was over here, and they moved toward Mesopotamia or Babylonia, also called Shinar, in this area. So this is where they've settled. They're making a tower and a city. And why are they doing that? Can you see any reason for them doing that? I mean, other than there is one, we've already looked at it, making a name for themselves.
They want the
Is there
top to
another-
reach to heaven. They want to make something as high as the heavens.
Who is that competing with?
God.
I mean, you know, we begin to see here, you know, this seed develop in Genesis chapter 11. So what is their fear? Do they have a fear though? In verse 4, are they fearful of something?
They'll be scattered.
Scattered.
Yeah, they don't want to be scattered. The very thing that God has told them to do, they don't want to do, right? So God's reaction is what?
Use their language and scatter them.
Yeah, so what? So first thing he does, right, is come down, right? To check them out. Is that because he couldn't see from heaven?
No.
No.
Maybe
Up
their
close
little
and
tower was
personal.
so puny that he couldn't see it. But yeah, so he came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Okay, so why is he doing that? What does he give? One of the more incredible passages in the entire Bible in verse 6 statements. What does he say about these men who have one same language and the same words? What's his assessment of human potential, if I could ask it that way?
That nothing will be impossible for them.
I mean, is that mind-blowing?
Yeah.
That's God saying that. I mean, I just am totally amazed by that statement every time I read it, that the potential that we have as human beings is amazing, you know. And I mean, I don't want to go off subject, but yesterday or this about two or 3 days ago, ChatGPT 4.0 came out. And I mean, it's like 1,000,000 times better than the previous one. I mean, the things that it's going to be able to do, you know, in terms of human potential, pretty frightening, you know, very frightening. And I just wonder if that's some of what he was talking about here. So what, and Carlos already mentioned it, what's God's judgment on the people? What's his judgment?
Use their language.
Okay, he's going to confuse their language. And
Will not understand each other.
yeah, so what's the result? So there are two results of the judgment. Do you see them? And you said one of them in verse 9.
Confuse the language and then scatter them over the earth.
So two things, going to confuse the language. Who's going to do that?
God.
Specifically? What does the text say?
God, the Lord scattered them.
So they don't just casually leave, even though they can't speak to each other. Isn't that interesting? It says the Lord did what? The Lord scattered. So the Lord scattered them. I mean, you see the sovereignty of God, you know, even right here, without a doubt. Now, what is the city named?
Babel.
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 Why is it named Babel?
Because it confused the language.
Yeah, and there's a real interesting point there. A lot of times in scripture, when you see a name, you'll see a description which follows it. And that'll tell you what the name means. And it does in this particular case.
Mhm.
So did you see
Confusing.
did you see a phrase that popped up over and over in this 9 verses? I kind of missed that. At the beginning, and then we see it we see it circle. It's a geographic phrase.
Whole earth.
Yeah. So I mean, we've got some businesses called Whole Earth in Austin, right? So, but yeah, so it's over the whole earth, and it says that the Lord scattered them. So, okay.
Do you also see a glimpse of the Trinity in verse 7?
Yes.
Because God has led us. So when he says us, is he referring to the Trinity?
Well, I think we wouldn't be able to use that to definitively say there's a Trinity, but you know, some people talk about the plurality. What's it called, David? You probably know what it is. I forget the name, but it is plural. You are correct. But I don't think we can go much further than that in regard to Trinity. So what's, oh, I missed one thing really significant in verse 4. You got to help me on this one. So what's repeated? What pronoun? What, you know, or kind of similar pronoun do you see repeated in verse 4? What do you see there?
Us.
Let us.
Us and we.
Ourselves.
Mhm.
Plural.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in verse 4, you've got ourselves, you've got us, you've got ourselves, you've got we. What does that suggest? The way they are describing themselves. What does that describe? What does that sound like?
United.
Okay, and who's on the throne?
They are.
I mean, this is kind of the origin of meism. I mean, what's the middle letter of sin? What's the middle letter of pride? So we're beginning to see that we've got a little virus that spreads here. It begins at least to spread in Genesis, right? And so it's a seed of rebellion. It's a seed of meism. It's
entitlement.
Yeah.
That's what it seems to me the tie was too to what you had just said was, you know, in verse 6, when the Lord says, in which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. I guess I was thinking not so much of the positive potential, but also what they could also do on the negative side, which is kind of what they're doing.
But that's a super observation.
Kind of a wake-up call, but
yeah, that's a great observation. Yes, yeah, and
the us in verse 7 is capitalized. It's divine.
Okay. Yeah, well, then it's got to be the Trinity. Well, we're not going to go there, but yeah. So basically, you know, we've got this city called Babel, and it's the origin of I wrote this down, spiritual harlotry. Let's kind of throw that in there because it's going to come up later on in our discussion. It basically means turning away from God to false gods. And in this case, their false god was fame. I mean, anything that we do to replace God. So you begin to see you've got this spirit of harlotry right at the beginning. And you've got this city, Babel, which is mentioned 298 times. Number 2 after what city in the Bible, do you think?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Some 800 times. But what you begin to see from the very beginning is this face-off of
Mhm.
you've got confusion versus Jerusalem, which is the word means what? What does it normally mean? Shalom for sure.
Mhm.
So you've got confusion versus peace,
Peace.
right?
It's
So-
interesting to
Ah.
compare these guys with Abraham, who never built a city, he lived in tents all his life, and he was looking for the heavenly city.
Mhm.
Amen.
That's a great observation. That's the antithesis of meism, isn't it?
Mm.
I
Mhm.
mean, the absolute antithesis of what was going on with Nimrod and crew. Going back to that in verse. I just put it up here again to remind us in 10:10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and it was in the land of Shinar. So this is where it begins. But what happens with the spreading? What's going to be spread when the people are spread over the entire or the whole earth?
Sin.
Yeah, and specifically this idea of spiritual harlotry, of rebellion against God, and it's going to be spread over the entire world. Now,
Hey, Bruce,
yes,
is it too much of a stretch? And I was just thinking about earlier when you were talking about before the eyes of the Lord and Nimrod being a great hunter. I mean, and maybe this is a stretch, but you could take before a couple of different ways. I mean, you could take it to mean before, meaning, in the eyes of the Lord, or you could like maybe take it in terms of chronological order, like in order of importance, maybe.
yeah,
Uh,
and
higher.
some people actually do that. I mean, they'll say something to the effect, "Mighty hunter against the Lord."
Mhm.
I've read that. I mean, this means
Mhm.
before, but I think your point is a good one. Yeah, because obviously we watch what he does, and he's a king, and he's got a kingdom from the very beginning when he should have been worshiping the Lord. He's worshiping himself, and this virus is going to spread through the entire world. So that's the question that I want to look at and compare to Revelation 17:18. That spirit of Babylon, of Babel, if you will, in Shinar.
Mhm.
What can you think of a passage in Revelation that we studied that might make you think about that might parallel with this? I'll give you a second to think about it. Not an easy
Fact
question necessarily,
that
but
it was a city,
I'm sorry.
the fact that it was a city.
Okay, well,
Opened.
yeah, let me go to
17:2.
let me have you go ahead
Yeah.
and read this one, Mark. Since you
Okay.
spoke, yeah, 17:5. Read that one for us.
And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth.
So what do you think I'm getting at? I don't want to say I'm getting at, but what do you think John is meaning to convey with this phrase, the mother of harlots?
That Babel was
Mhm.
the city that started a great separation with
Yeah.
God, that started a
Mhm.
whole mess of problems.
Yes.
So, was the beginning place that led to abominations of the earth, because these were men who tried to be greater than God.
Yes. That's great. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Um,
And also, this is after the flood.
yes.
I mean, there's already been a rebellion against
Well,
God
sure.
that was dealt with, and this is starting over, a new beginning.
That's a good
And
point.
yet,
I mean, that's a good
yeah,
point.
almost right out of the bat.
It
Kind
only
of.
took 3 generations, right?
But that's a good segue for my little diagram I've got here. I called it.
Mhm,
It goes to what Chris said. I mean, you throw that rock into the water and it just ripples out. So Babylon's sin of rebellion and harlotry permeates the entire world. So a mother is going to have what?
Children.
Children.
Children, right? Yeah, and we're talking primarily with, it seems like John is with women because he calls her a woman and so forth. So she's going to have what? In terms of women.
Children.
Offspring.
Okay, so she's going to have daughters, right? So she's a mother of harlots. She's going to have, and she has had many daughters. And I just ran across this book title this week, America, the Daughter of Babylon. You know, because some people think, well, New York City is Babylon. Well, she is a pretty bad place and probably has that spirit of Nimrod, you know, and meism and you know, spiritual harlotry, but you know, she's not on the right continent for one thing. But she's a daughter. And that's the point I want to kind of make, you know, as we go through that. There are a lot of, so what we're looking for, we want to find the identity of the mother, if you will, the progenitor. That's who we would be looking for as we look at these passages. But as Chris pointed out, this is where the seed began of this rebellion, because like Dave made a great point. You know, God already flushed it one time, but now man's going to go that direction again. So, okay, well, let's go ahead then and keep moving on through our witnesses. And the next one we're going to be looking at is Isaiah.
Bruce, can I make a quick comment?
You can.
That Tobin got me to thinking, Nimrod, mighty hunter before the Lord. What if he set himself between the people and set himself before the Lord as the Lord? Do we have ourselves a type of Antichrist / beast in Nimrod?
Right.
What do some of you other guys think about that? I have a comment, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a great comment.
I mean, what are you trying to do?
Yes. I mean, because, you know, kind of things, you know, things kind of go around, you know, and kind of come back to where they started from sometime, it seems like. And so, yeah, I mean, he's a picture. And in fact, you know, a lot of the commentators will say that Nimrod is a picture of exactly what you said, the Antichrist.
Well, anti means, you know, what you told us is both opposed to and instead of.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really what you have here.
So that really fits.
Yeah.
So,
And again, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but maybe part of that, building the tower that high as well, we're not going to get wiped out again by a flood.
well, you must have been reading Josephus. That's exactly what Josephus said was the reason that they had built the you know, the tower, so they wouldn't get wiped out by the flood. So, you read
Bruce,
that? That's amazing.
so Bruce, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You're talking about the right back to the descendant of these people. This 3:15, Genesis 3:15, give any indication there? Because he said, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seeds." Is that's where that coming from? Way back there as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, yeah, David's right. Yeah. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. The proto-evangelium, the first description of the gospel in the Bible, right?
And Satan confuses Eve and Adam. I mean, that's exactly what the source of sin is when Satan says, "Oh, did God really say?" I mean, and there's some confusion when Eve responds, "Well, we're not supposed to eat it nor touch it."
That's a whole sermon, isn't it, David?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
But yes, it's very analogous to what Nimrod was doing. And so you guys are really thinking about Nimrod. I love it because, yeah, I think he's definitely one of the major culprits, which started the spirit of Babylon. So, okay, well, let's go ahead then and look at Revelation, Isaiah 13, 1 through 12. And let's see, PK, can I get you to read, go ahead and read, actually one, I have 12 up there, but go ahead and read 1 through 13, Isaiah 13, 1 through.
Okay, Isaiah 13, 1 through 13. The oracle concerning Babylon, which Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saw. On a bare hill, raise a signal, cry aloud to them. Wave the hand for them to enter, the gates of the nobles. I myself has commanded my consecrated ones, and I have summoned my mighty men to execute my anger, my proudly exalting ones. The sound of the tumult is on the mountains, as of a great multitude. The sound of the uproar of the kingdoms of nations gathering together. The Lord of hosts is mustering a host for battle. They come from a distant land, from the ends of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Wail for the city of the Lord. The day of the Lord is near. As destruction from the Almighty it will come. Therefore all hands will be feeble, and every human heart will melt. They will be dismayed. Pangs and agony will seize them. They will be in anguish like a woman in labor. They will look aghast at one another. Their faces will be aflame. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land a desolation, destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will put an end to the pomp of the arrogant, and lay low the pompous pride of the ruthless. I will make people more rare than fine gold, and mankind than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the wrath of the Lord of hosts in the day of his fierce anger.
Okay, thank you. So the oracle or the burden is to who? Is against who in this section? Who's the oracle against?
Babylon.
So Babylon, right? Pretty straightforward. We're not going to go through verse by verse because we just simply don't have time, because we have about 100 verses in Jeremiah to cover tonight, which is going to be quite a task. So what? Just someone summarize what's the concern of Isaiah in this section? What does he warn about? We're going to be spending more time on this, but
The day of the Lord is coming.
yep. So the day of the Lord. So what I wanted you to see. So what's the day of the Lord going to be like?
Destruction.
Destruction. Okay. Now remember,
Desolation.
he's talking, and here I want to make sure he is talking to Babylon,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So the day of the Lord is apropos to Babylon, right? At least it would seem
Mhm.
to be. What else does he say about the day of the Lord?
It's near.
But he says it's near. What does it say in verse 9 that might be applicable to Babylon? Do you see anything?
To
The
make
land
the
will be
land
made
a
a desolation.
desolation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I heard about 4 of you saying. Yeah, great, exactly. So he's going to make the land a desolation, and so he's talking about Babylon, and we're trying to determine if Babylon in Revelation 17 and 18 is related to what Isaiah is saying here, because he says that Babylon has to be is going to be made desolate. Made. What else does he say in terms of the day of the Lord? He describes some signs in the heavens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Verse 10, Stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. Sun will be dark when it rises. Kind of Matthew 24.
So I was going to ask you, and you jumped right to it. Did everybody see how quickly he jumped to that? We've seen that before. It's quoted by Jesus in the Olivet Discourse. At least part of it is, right? In Matthew 24, 29. In fact, why don't we go there? I'll go over here, or somebody here. Here we go. So I'll just read it. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. So if we consider what this is quoting, that Jesus quotes this, what does that tell us about the time range that this is dealing with, this particular prophecy?
But between the destruction of Babylon at the end of 18 and the coming of Jesus in Revelation 19.
Okay, so it's toward the end, right? It's toward the end of this age. Very clear. I mean, from looking at what Jesus said. So it's obviously toward the end of this age. And what's he going to do to the world at that time, according to verse 11?
Punish the world for its evil, wicked for their iniquity, put an end to the arrogance of the proud, and abase the haughtiness of the ruthless. Wow.
You made us a
What
list.
a day that'll be.
Yeah. And what about verse 12?
Ooh. Not many left.
Not many left, right? Just kind of trying to tie this, is there anything in Revelation that might jive with to make the land a desolation? Think of any passages?
Revelation 6, okay.
Go ahead and read this one, Paul. Can you read this one for us? Revelation 17:16.
Yeah, and the 10 horns which you saw, and the beast, these will hate the harlot and will make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire.
So do you see what we're doing here? This describes the destruction of Babylon, right? 13. But it sure sounds a lot like the destruction of Babylon in 1716, doesn't it? Or does it?
It does.
Okay. So just keep those thoughts in mind. We're just trying to pair this with and determine what's the identity of Babylon in the city Babylon in Revelation 17:18. So,
verse 9 uses the same language to make the land a desolation.
yeah, that's exactly what I was getting. Right. Exactly. That was since it's described here of Babylon, but the question is, and I'm glad you brought us back to it, has that ever occurred? Totally. 100%.
I believe it has.
Okay.
Or not. It tried to be resurrected, I know, by Saddam Hussein. He spent a lot of money digging up the ruins and recreating a picture of it, certainly. So.
Okay, well, we'll hold that thought a little bit, but that's the question. Has this been fulfilled? Has it been fulfilled? And we'll
Yes and no.
So we'll hold that thought as we work through this. So go ahead, Chris, can you read Isaiah 13:19 through 22 for us?
Sir. And Babylon, the beauty of kingdoms, the glory of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited or lived in from generation to generation, nor will the Arab pitch his tent there, nor will shepherds make their flocks lie down there. But desert creatures will lie down there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches will also live there, and shaggy goats will frolic there. Hyenas will howl in their fortified towers, and jackals in their luxurious palaces. Her fateful time also will soon come, and her days will not be prolonged.
Okay, thank you. So the subject is Babylon, right? Okay. Tell me 5 things that occur to Babylon in what Chris just read. What do you see? What's the first thing?
Like Sodom and Gomorrah.
So since it says like it or as Sodom and Gomorrah, what does that imply?
Fire and
Desolation.
brimstone.
Fire and brimstone? What else?
They'll cease to exist.
Cease to
Yeah.
exist. Okay. That's good. That's good. That's what it seems to imply. I mean, and in fact, if you go back archaeologically, I was really surprised. You cannot find any archaeological remains of Sodom and Gomorrah that are
Right.
definitive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone. And so he's saying Babylon, gone, right? Isn't that what he's saying? What else? What else does Isaiah prophesy?
Never be inhabited.
So
or
number
lived in.
2, never going to be inhabited again. What else?
Won't even camp there.
No camp. No Boy Scout camps here. So not even an Arab will pitch his tent there. And what else? Keep going.
No flocks.
Okay. So the
Mhm.
shepherds, no flocks. So what's the contrast though? So since we have all of these things which are negative, is there anything there at all?
It will be desolate.
Desert creatures will lie down there.
Yeah.
Houses will be full of owls.
Ostriches. This sounds like a bunch of unclean animals.
That's great.
Gonna
Oh
be
yeah,
designated as
absolutely.
unclean under the law later on.
Does this make you think about anything that we saw in Revelation?
I finally figured out what an unclean and hateful bird is. It's an owl and an ostrich. So Revelation 18:2.
Okay, go ahead and read it for us.
And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unclean spirit and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird.
Okay. Do you see a parallel between Isaiah's prophecy and John's statement?
Yeah.
It
I
surely
think
looks
Phil
like.
and Paul can tell us to confirm that an ostrich can be a hateful bird.
Okay.
The word for shaggy goats, there's a fair bit I've read on that about that it's the word Lilith, which can mean demons.
Yes.
So it's possibly where
No, it's good.
where God is going to imprison the demons during the millennium.
Mhm.
I think you're spot on. I think that's excellent, Phil. And because here he says that, I mean, now remember we said this is when Babylon falls. So they're falling, and then you have the sequelae or the after effects after Babylon falls. After Babylon falls, there's going to be no men there. But I think what you're implying, and we're not implying, you're stating, and I think you're spot on, they're going to be demons, and they're going to be imprisoned there. And I think you are right. We can't really tell from this text per se, but I think they're there for the millennium, for the next 1,000 years, because this is the end of Babylon, right?
Mhm.
That's what so that's what he's prophesied here. And so I want to just look at this. You see this phrase right here, nor will an Arab pitch his tent there. So I've got a picture for you. Here it is from 1890. We don't know exactly the date of it, but we do know that it was an Arab pitching his tent in Babylon. this is absolutely hundreds of years later
Mhm.
after Babylon is said to be destroyed. So going back here, that's not fulfilled.
Mhm.
It's just not fulfilled. So that we're beginning to think, well, wait a minute. This is prophecy which is future, and which remains to be fulfilled. Is that a fair statement?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to make you say anything that's not there. Let's look at Isaiah. Now, this is a really interesting, I missed this at first. Let me show you something, and you probably picked it up. I missed it. But we just got through talking about the hyenas and the demons and so forth, but then we've got a chapter break. We know about chapter breaks if they're not inspired. So let's go ahead and read, because this looks like the end of Babylon that we've just described. Now let's look and see what Isaiah 14, 1 through 4 says. So Paul, can you read that for us, Paul? Isaiah 4, 1 through 4.
Which Paul?
Oh,
Me?
yeah.
14, 1 to 4. When the Lord will have compassion on Jacob and again choose Israel and settle them in their own land, then strangers will join them and attach themselves to the house of Jacob. The peoples will take them along and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel will possess them as an inheritance in the land of the Lord, as male servants and female servants, and they will take their captives captive and will rule over their oppressors. And will be in the day when the Lord gives you rest from your pain and turmoil and harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased and how fury has ceased.
Okay, thank you. So what does this sound like he's talking about? Remember what we've just said in context? What was the context we just read about Babylon?
Destroyed.
Destroyed, which would be at the end of, at which bowl judgment?
7.
Seventh bowl, right? And what does this sound like? It's describing, though. It just picks right up. But see,
Regathering of the land.
says the Lord will have compassion on Jacob and Israel. And settle them in their own land. What's he talking about there, do you think?
The restoration of Israel, like Ezekiel and
Yeah.
Romans.
This is moving into the millennial reign. This follows the destruction of Babylon, and here we've got the restoration now of Israel. We'll be talking more about it when we talk about the millennium, but I think you definitely see it there if you read what he's saying. And does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can it be sort of a double duty thing, though? This is Isaiah, right?
Isaiah.
Yeah. So it could be that he is also prophesying the return.
The what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. Is he also prophesying about the return from the Babylonian captivity?
You know, I don't think so, because of verse 1. Why would I say that? Somebody see something that, who came back from Babylon? Who was sent to Babylon?
Jacob, then the southern kingdom. So that's,
yeah. So because Israel had already been taken off in 722 BC to Assyria. So here you've got them both joining back up again, which is intriguing, so that it implies that this would fit with the passages we saw in Ezekiel, like Mark said.
The two sticks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And verse 3 also talks about in the day when the Lord gives you rest.
I like it.
Mm.
Yeah,
These are days. This is the
this has to be a special time
Mhm.
because right now there's not much rest, and there won't be rest
No.
until this.
And they didn't have much rest after they got back.
No, ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't get rest when they came back from Babylon.
You're talking about from Babylon,
That's
absolutely.
what I'm saying, yeah. So they
Yeah,
just went
absolutely.
right back into the meat
Yes.
grinder, as it were.
So I don't want to disappoint anybody because we're not going to look at all the I wills in 14. We just don't have time. We've got about 90 verses, and we'll look at that probably at some point in time later. But what we're going to do now is take a journey through Jeremiah, and I don't have those verses up. There were so many verses. I just didn't. I didn't think I could make a PowerPoint that would be really usable. And so what we're going to do, if you'll get your PowerPoint, not your PowerPoint, get your PowerPoints out. No, get your observation worksheets out. These guys, and get your observation worksheets out, or your Bible, whichever. Turn to Jeremiah 50. And what we're going to do is read selected sections because we just don't have time. And then what Mark is going to do is he's going to read a section in Revelation 17 and 18 that parallels. Or you'll determine whether or not you think it parallels. And we have two goals, because what we want to look for is similar descriptions to what we saw in Revelation 17 and 18. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing, we want to look for prophecies against Babylon, which are yet future. And remembering that name, Babylon, is the same name he uses in the book of the Revelation. And so can we tie these together? Is he referring, the question then is he referring to a literal Babylon with these similar descriptions and prophecies yet future to support that the city in 1718 is a literal Babylon, which would imply there's no Babylon, now, which would imply what? What would have to happen for it to be a literal Babylon or fulfillment, even there? It would have
Be
to
rebuilt.
It'd have to be rebuilt. Okay, so I realize I'm going against the grain on this one because this is not the most common interpretation. And I haven't interpreted it, but I want you now to make the observations. You kind of maybe be on the jury panel. And so what we'll start with is Jeremiah chapter 50. I'll just read the first verse to kind of lay the context. It's the word which the Lord spoke concerning Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans, through Jeremiah the prophet. Okay, now we're going to start jumping in to passages. So what we're going to look at first is, let's see, verse 3 through 5. So this is 53 through 5. Addison, can I get you to read 3 through 5 for us? We're in chapter 50, so I won't say 50 every time.
Okay, sure. For a nation has come up against her out of the north. It will make her land an object of horror, and there will be no inhabitant in it. Both man and beast have wandered off, they have gone away. In those days and at that time, declares the Lord, the sons of Israel will come, both they and the sons of Judah as well. They will go along weeping as they go, and it will be the Lord their God they will seek. They will ask for the way to Zion, turning their faces in its direction. They will come that they may join themselves to the Lord in an everlasting covenant that will not be forgotten.
Okay, so what does this sound like, this prophecy? Says a nation will come up against you from the north. Does that sound like a prophecy that's been fulfilled? It's a hard question, but start right there.
Babylon, but Assyria comes from the north. I mean,
Right.
Assyria is just north
Okay,
of Babylon, and she came against them.
okay, I'm just, we're just thinking about it. So,
Persians would have been north, right? The Medo-Persian Empire
yeah.
Medo-Persians as well.
Medo-Persian Empire.
would have taken out Babylon.
So the question then arises is, let's
Oh,
go,
the
let's
other
just
one,
go
yeah.
with the Medo-Persians.
Thank you.
Let's look at
Yeah.
that. What happened? Because I think we need to set that context. What happened when the
That's it.
Medo-Persians came in Daniel chapter 5? And Daniel chapter 5, Belshazzar saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah,
right?
on the wall, yeah. Let's see.
And what happened in 539 BC? We want to make sure kind of have that background as we work through these prophecies. How did the Medes and Persians get in how did they defeat the Babylonians? Was this a raging battle? Were there
No.
no inhabitants left after the battle?
No, they came in through the river, it seems like I remember.
That's right. Exactly. They diverted the river, the Euphrates, and they were able to wade in, and they came in to the city of Babylon, and there was no battle. There was no fight, basically. So and now we're looking back at and then the question is, what did the Medes and Persians and Cyrus, what did he leave? How did he leave Babylon after he took it over? What did he do to it? Did he destroy it?
No.
No, he didn't.
No, he began returning peoples, and he began returning peoples that had been taken out of their nations by the Babylonians and putting them back into their homelands.
Okay,
Israel
well,
was one of them.
Yeah. So and at 70, after 70 years, they were going to go back. But here's the Cyrus cylinder, which is Cyrus himself quoted on what he did when he went into Babylon to defeat Babylon. He says, and this is Cyrus with the cuneiform having been translated, without any battle, sparing Babel on any calamity. I am Cyrus, king of Babylon. He's already called himself the king. When I entered Babylon, under jubilation and rejoicing, troops walked around Babylon. Look at that, in peace.
In peace.
I did not allow anyone to terrorize any place of the country. I strove for peace in Babylon and in all his other sacred cities. All of them I resettled in a peaceful place. Ducks and doves, I don't know where that comes from. I endeavored to fortify and repair their dwelling places. Now go back and look at that passage we just looked at.
Mm-hmm.
How does that passage fit with this? What does he say? They're going to come from the north. It says, what are they going to do to the land?
Make the land desolate.
Make it,
Object of
an
horror.
object of what?
Horror.
Horror, right? And how many people are going to be living in?
None.
So
I think in verse 3b,
uh-huh.
it says man and beast have wandered off, and that implies to me that this desolation happens over quite a period of time, which is what did happen.
Okay, well, let's connect it then with verse 4. What happens? What's the time phrase in verse 4? That's very significant.
Mm-hmm.
What's the time phrase?
In those days,
So the question
at that
is,
time.
with both time phrases, what would we attach that to? What days?
When Babylon was attacked,
Captured.
conquered.
Okay. And could it be when there's no inhabitant in it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, because what's he describing here? We already seen it once in Isaiah. these passages are not easy per se, but they're
Mhm.
very, very informative. So in those days and at that time, the sons of Israel will come, both they and the sons of Judah as well. So what is he describing here that we already seen in Isaiah 14? A very similar action is occurring. And you move into verse 5.
Israel and Judah are together.
Yes. And what really nails it in verse 5?
Mhm.
What does he say?
Yeah, it's going to bring them into
Join-
the everlasting covenant, Jeremiah 31.
So we've got
Yes.
these. So what does that suggest that this time that has just been previously mentioned prior to that is talking about? If we can pay attention to time phrases, what would that
Millennial
suggest?
Kingdom.
Verse 3 is suggesting time-wise. When? Potentially.
Tribulation.
Yeah.
Second coming.
Yeah. At the end of time. So at the end of
There's,
time, right?
there's two occurrences in this section where it says in those days and at that time, and both of them refer to tribulation passages, but the passages around them don't seem to refer to tribulation. They seem to me to refer to the Medes.
Okay, well,
You know, but when it talks about
Yeah,
the
I
sons of
agree.
when it talks about the sons of Israel and the sons of Judah weeping and coming along, that's end times. I
Yeah.
mean, that's Ezekiel.
yeah.
I mean, Israel, after the Assyrian capture of Israel, they were scattered all over to the ends of the earth, all over the place.
Well, that was it. Yeah, that
That-
was, yeah.
That was what happened first. So it's Judah. Only Judah goes back into the land.
Right. After the Babylonian captivity.
Yeah,
Right.
after the exile.
But here
Is-
it's got Judah and Israel.
Right.
Exactly.
So that changes it a little bit, right?
Right.
So that has to take it into the beginning of the millennium.
Well, and that weeping is just so similar to what you read there too, when they're, at the end.
So it says there will be no inhabitant in it. I mean, that's a pretty strong statement. What happened, for example, to Daniel after the Medes and the Persians came in?
They made him a leader.
They made him a leader. He stayed there.
Yeah.
So was that a fulfillment?
Couldn't be.
It doesn't sound like it could be.
None of this.
Well, let's just keep that thought in mind. I mean, I'm not gonna push it, but let's just keep working through these. And let's see. Let me get my next one here. And this is in 50, and we're gonna go all the way. We're gonna go all the way up to let's see, 29. Yeah. So we'll go to 29. And Bill, if I can get you to read 29, it's 50, 29. Bill, can you read that?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. 50, 29.
Just that one verse?
Right. Yeah, because we're just going to have to, I'm going to have
Sure.
to put a lot of things out of context. I'm breaking my rules all over the place here.
I know.
Summon,
okay.
summon many against Babylon, all those who bend the bow, and camp against her on every side, and let there be no escape. Repay her according to her work, according to all that she has done, so do to her. For she has become arrogant against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel.
Okay. So, Mark, will you read Revelation 18:6? And here's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to look at passages that are similar in Jeremiah 50, 51, or similar to those in Revelation 17 and 18. So
You got to read 7 too for that. So I'm going to read 6 and 7.
yes,
Right. Pay her back even as she has paid, and give back to her double according to her deeds. In the cup which she has mix twice as much for her. To the degree that she glorified herself and lived sensuously, to the same degree give her torment and mourning. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, I'm not a widow, and will never see mourning.
okay. So do you see a similarity in what
Mhm.
Phil read?
Repay.
Right? Repay her according to her work, according to all that she has done, so do to her. So we see a similarity between the passage on Babylon in Jeremiah 50 and in Revelation. We're just trying to show how these are very closely related.
And the encamp on her on every side. In Revelation 17, I think it's 19, is it? The 10 kings come against her, so they would be on every side.
That's good. Yeah, that's
Huh.
good. Excellent.
Definitely.
Everybody hear what Phil was talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, and go to the passage. You're talking about 17. You're talking about right here, aren't you? 16,
Yeah.
17.
Yep. 16. Thanks.
And the 10 horns which you saw in the beast, these will hate the harlot and make her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and will burn her up with fire. So it seems to be a very interesting similarity to verse 29, where they encamp against her on every side and let there be no escape. Because he's talking about Babylon, right? And here in Revelation 17:16, we're talking about what? Who are they against?
Babylon.
Babylon. It says the harlot, but this is Babylon, right? And what do we know the harlot is? What is the harlot? It's a what? Is it a ecumenical system? Is it is it a commercial system? What is it?
Great city.
Yeah, verse 18, probably the most important verse in chapter 17. And the woman you saw is the great city, which reigns over the kings of the earth. And what we're trying to see if there's any relationship to what Jeremiah is prophesying and this great city that John describes. Okay, so let's go on to 39. So this is verse 39 and 39 and 40. 39 and 40, and let's see. Carlos, could you read for us 39 and 40? In Jeremiah 50. Are you on mute? I can pull it up for you.
Yep, sorry. Got it. So therefore the desert creatures will live there along with the jackals. The ostriches also will live in it, and it will never again be inhabited or dwelt in from generation to generation. As when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and its neighbors, declares the Lord. No man will live there, nor will any son of man reside in it.
Okay. That make you think of any passages we've already studied tonight?
Isaiah 13:19.
Exactly, and then in Revelation, Mark, you want to read Revelation for us, 18:2?
And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unclean spirit and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird.
Okay, so do you see the relationship, the similarity between what Jeremiah is prophesying about a city called Babylon, and John picks up on in
Mhm.
the city called Babylon the Great. Similarities, right? Is that fair?
Mhm.
I want to push it.
It seems like verse 40, you also have Revelation 18:21 through 24.
There, go ahead and read that.
Then a strong angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it down into the sea, saying, So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer. And the sound of harpists and musicians and flute players and trumpeters will not be heard in you any longer. And no craftsman of any craft will be found in you any longer. And the sound of the mill will not be heard in you any longer. And the light of a lamp will not shine in you any longer, and the voice of the bridegroom and bride will not be heard in you any longer, for your merchants were great men of the earth, because of the nations were deceived by your sorcery. In her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and all who have been slain on the earth.
So what does that correlate with in verse 40, for example?
Nor will any man, son of man, reside in it. No man will live there.
So this prophecy.
Sodom and Gomorrah, too. Yeah, the whole
Yes.
thing.
Yes, exactly. So this prophecy is one that he's making, which is paralleled by John's statement. Is that fair? We're just kind of looking at the similarities and letting the text, speak for itself. So let's keep reading. And in verse 46, so we'll go to 46. And Chris, can I get you to do 50:46?
Yes, you can. 50:46. At the shout, Babylon has been seized. The earth is shaken, and an outcry is heard among the nations.
Okay. So what geographic terms catch your attention in that verse, first of all, just so we get the verse in our minds?
Earthquake.
Okay, but
The nations, so
what does that imply?
worldwide.
And what's the second word that even substantiates that?
The earth.
The earth, right?
The earth,
So it says the earth is shaken. So here now Babylon's been seized, and now we're talking about a global thing. Do you remember anything that we saw in Revelation?
Kings of the earth are dismayed and weeping.
Okay.
The kings, the merchants, the
just go ahead and
shipmasters.
read a couple of them. Just start at 18:9, and maybe that's enough because it's a long section. It's about 10 verses. But
and the kings of the earth who committed acts of immorality and lived sensuously with her will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning.
yeah, and what do they cry?
Woe, woe. Babylon has been.
What do they cry? Whoa, whoa, whoa! Right, the
great city Babylon, the strong city.
Yeah.
For 1 hour your judgment has come.
1 hour your judgment. So they and we see the same cry from the merchants. We see the same shout from the shipmasters, right? So we're beginning to see there's a parallel. The whole earth is shaken. Could this be a parallel passage with that? I mean, he's not just talking about, in other words, Babylon here is seized. Obviously, he's not just speaking of Mesopotamia. He says it's worldwide. And then we go to Revelation chapter 18, and we can see that all the world basically is shouting, whoa, 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 right? Okay. Let's keep going. We're going to go to 51. This is the really long chapter, 64 verses, I think. We're not going to do them all, but we'll do a few of them. So look at 5 through 8. And PK, can I get you to read? This is Jeremiah 51, verse 5 through verse 8.
Absolutely. Jeremiah 51:5. For Israel and Judah have not been forsaken by their God, the Lord of hosts, but the land of the Chaldeans is full of guilt against the Holy One of Israel. Flee from the midst of Babylon, let everyone save his life. Be not cut off in her punishment, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance, the repayment he is rendering her. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hands, making all the earth drunken. The nations drank of her wine before the nations went mad. Suddenly Babylon has fallen and been broken. Wail for her. Take balm for her pain. Perhaps she may be healed.
Okay. So any bells going off here? Anything sound familiar? The things we've seen in the Revelation? Go ahead and read Mark 18:4.
Yes.
18:4.
Okay. I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not participate in her sins and receive of her plagues."
Okay, that parallels with what? With what? With
6.
which
Yeah.
says what?
Flee from the midst
Flee.
of Babylon.
So
Yeah,
flee
get
from
out
the
of there.
midst of Babylon, right? Come out, and it parallels with "come out of her, my people."
Mm.
Okay. How about in verse 7? You see a similarity in verse 7. And I'll get you to read it in just a second, Mark. I bet you some. I know you'll see it.
17:4.
Yes, go ahead and read that one if you've got it, Phil.
I haven't got it. If Mark's got
Okay,
it.
Mark's got it. Mark,
The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality.
and go ahead and read 18:6 also.
Pay her back even as she has paid, and give back to her double according to her deeds in the cup which she has mixed twice as much for her.
So what's the similarity between those two verses we read in Revelation 17:18 and Jeremiah 51:7? What's the similarity? Pretty
Cup.
straightforward.
Cup,
Say again, Jesse?
the cup.
Yep. Yes, sir. The cup, right? The cup. And go ahead and read 18:3, Mark. I'm sorry I didn't get you to do that one.
18:3. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of her passion, of her immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality.
Now read 50, verse 7, second part.
The nations have drunk of her wine, therefore the nations are going mad.
How does that sound?
Just like today.
But they sound similar, don't they?
Yes,
It
they do.
does.
So-
Except the one difference I see though, Bruce, and I'd like to talk about it, in 7 though, the cup is in the hand of the Lord
That's a great observation.
and
Yeah.
not in the hand of the woman. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that the Lord sovereignty doesn't mean that he's in charge in all things, but it just seems to me, that's different.
Well, I think what you're alluding to about the sovereignty of God over, I mean, he allows, you know, he allows this to happen.
Right.
Well, he said Babylon was a hammer in his hand.
Yes. I mean, he allowed that to happen, and yet he's going to punish them.
Mm.
They did to to Judah. So there's that tension between man's responsibility and God's sovereignty. It's all through the Bible. What about in verse 8, where it says, "Suddenly Babylon has fallen and been broken"? I won't read the rest of it. Does that make you think of anything we saw in chapter 18?
Mm.
How fast? Go ahead and read 18, Mark 18,
In
8
an hour.
10.
18:8 through 10. For this reason, in one day her plagues will come, pestilence and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for the Lord God who judges her is strong. And the kings of the earth who committed acts of immorality and live sensuously here will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, Babylon, strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come.
Is that suddenly?
Mhm.
Sound like suddenly? Yeah, so we're seeing another similar, very similar description to what Jeremiah has prophesied. And now John's saying the same thing. Now keep in mind, what's Jeremiah writing about? He's writing about an entity, Babylon.
Mhm.
Okay. And John then is got a name Babylon, and what we're trying to discern is this a literal Babylon?
Mhm.
And we'll just keep on looking at it. Let's look at verse 9.
Can I interject
you
something
can,
about,
sure, you
yeah,
can.
about verse 7 again? Babylon has been a golden cup in the hand of the Lord, intoxicating all the earth. The nations have drunk of her wine. That golden Babylon has been used by the Lord to intoxicate the earth, to have the nations become drunk of her wine. I mean, this is God's judgment going on.
Yeah.
In
I
the
think
hand
that's
of the
fair.
Lord, Babylon has become the cup that everybody's drinking of. We looked at the merchants, and we looked at we've looked at the kings, and we've looked at the seamanship, the whole thing.
Yeah. I think that's
They
good.
drank fully of Babylon. That's what I'm trying to get at.
What does that remind you of? How we started out off with her in Genesis chapter 11, and the parallel passage that we saw there, that she was the what? The mother of the mother of harlotry, right? And so, I mean, she's got a worldwide effect. So we see that in those passages, because it says all the earth and it says the nations. So this is clearly, a global phenomena, even back in Jeremiah, even in Jeremiah 51. And so, okay, let's look then at verse 9, 9 and 10. And Tobin, can I get you to read 51, 9 and 10?
You can.
Thank you.
We applied healing to Babylon, but she was not healed. Forsake her, and let us each go into his own country, for her judgment has reached to heaven and towers up to the very skies. The Lord has brought about our vindication. Come and let us recount in Zion the work of the Lord our God.
Okay. What two commands do you see there that have some similarity to what we've read in Revelation 18? What are the two commands?
18:5, her sin has reached up to heaven.
Okay.
The command forsake her is a command.
So that's a command. What does that
Leave.
sound like in Revelation 18:4? I've got it up here. And also in verse 10, what's the command there?
Come out.
Come out, right? Have we seen that? Here it is in verse 4, 18:4. Come out of her, my people. Again, a similarity between Jeremiah's prophecy and John's, writing of describing Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, this also connects us back to the Genesis passage. And we've seen that her sins piled up. We looked at that.
Yeah, that's good.
Piling up and built, towers up to the very skies. That's
absolutely.
God judges.
Yeah. He judges when you rebel against him and you want to build your tower. So yeah. So go ahead and read, Dave, read verse 13. Verse 13. Again, we're looking for similarities.
Yeah.
And
you who dwell by many waters, abundant in treasures, your end is come, the measure of your end.
And Mark, read 17:1 now.
17:1. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, Come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many
Many
waters.
waters.
Okay. Was this fulfilled in 539 BC? 539 BC is when the Medes and the Persians conquered Babylon. That's probably not a good, that's not a good question. I'm gonna retract that question. I don't like that question. Retract that question, lawyers, please. Okay, so since
Strike that from the record.
stretch out from the record, since you laughed at me, I'm gonna get you to read 24 through 26, Chris, 24 through 26.
This is 51, right?
Yes, sir.
But I will repay Babylon and all the inhabitants of Chaldea for all their evil that they have done in Zion before your eyes, declares the Lord. Behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain, who destroys the whole earth, declares the Lord. And I will stretch out my hand against you and roll you down from the crags, and I will make you a burnt out mountain. They will not take from you even a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but you will be desolate forever, declares the Lord.
Okay. So
Wow.
what do you see in verse 24 that sounds similar to what we've already talked about at the beginning? 18:6.
Pay double.
Yeah.
18:6.
18:6. Pay her back, right? And here it is. Pay her back. And it says destroying mountain. What does he mean by destroying mountain? Is that a literal mountain? In context, what is that?
Kingdom.
It's a kingdom. It's
a kingdom, yeah.
It's a kingdom. And what kingdom is it?
Babylon.
Babylon, right? What happens to that mountain in verse 25? What happens to the mountain?
Becomes a burnt out mountain.
Okay. So in verse
26.
26, what's he saying there about the stone? What's the idea?
Rebuilding from the rubble.
Okay.
Will be nothing. Nothing should be
So
done.
you can't even use a stone, right? Because there won't be anything. And it says you'll be desolate forever. I mean, did that happen to Babylon? Pass. Is this fulfilled? Is Babylon desolate forever?
Yeah.
Remember, I showed you some tents, some guys camping out in the 1900s.
Mhm.
You want to think about that? I don't have it here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me go ahead and show you some. I wasn't going to use this, but I think I will use it. Go down here. Here we are. Okay, here we go. Because this is important. I'll go through it really quick. Babylon's history after 539 BC. So that's when they're destroyed, right? Herodotus describes Babylon as flourishing, 450 BC, 332 BC. Alexander the Great visits the city, 312. Seleucus, Alexander's general, seizes Babylon. You see what's happened? Babylon destroyed forever. That's what I'm trying to get at. 25 BC, Strabo, a geographer, visited. He describes the Hanging Gardens. Remember the day of Pentecost? What happened on the day of Pentecost? There were people from Mesopotamia, Jews from Mesopotamia were there.
From Babylon.
So you see that. And they were from Babylon. You see the Babylonian Talmud, a Jewish commentary on the law, was written where? From Babylon. From Babylon. My question is, what I'm trying to establish here, and let's go all the way up to, Hawkle mentions Babel as an insignificant village, but still in existence. Yes. Was its glory gone? Was its grandeur gone? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But was it totally 100% Sodom and Gomorrah style demolished?
Not yet.
No, it was not. It was not. I mean, in 1100 AD, two mosques, Babylon was known as two mosques. It was enlarged, fortified, and became known as Hilla. Wikipedia says that Hilla now it's actually 500,000 people around this area. I'm going to show you some Google shots, which blew my mind when I saw them, if we get time to do that. Anyway, I just want to make the point that the historical record does not show that Babylon was destroyed. What am I getting at with the prophecies of Jeremiah? That keeps saying they're
yet to be fulfilled.
Yes, that they're yet to be fulfilled. I mean, that's the implication, right? Look at verse. Okay, so we didn't read this. So let's look at 29 and 30. Jesse, can I get you to read 29 and 30? It's chapter 51.
I will. And the land will tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without inhabitant. The mighty men of Babylon have ceased fighting. They have remained in their stronghold. Their might has failed. They became like women. They have burned her dwelling places. The bars of her gate are broken.
Okay, thank you. So in 29, what do we see? What's the statement that's made there by Jeremiah's prophecy at the end of the verse? A desolation what?
Without inhabitants.
Without inhabitants. But you saw what I just showed you from the historical record. That's not true. That's just simply not true. The glory and the grandeur, yes, that's true. But in terms of inhabitants, that is absolutely, not true. What about the part that Jesse read about the fire? Does that remind you of how Babylon's going to be destroyed? Look at 7:16, Mark, and 18:8.
17:16. And the 10 horns which you saw in the beast, these will hate the harlot, and they will make her desolate and naked. They will eat her flesh, and they will burn her up with fire. And you said 18:8?
18:8. Yes, sir. Yeah.
For this reason, in one day her plagues will come, pestilence and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for the Lord God who judges her is strong.
Okay. Do you see the parallels? You see the similarity?
If you look at verses 31 and 32, it's very clearly to me talking about the original Babylon, because the king didn't know he'd been conquered, so the messengers ran and told him, and so on.
But it says the city was captured from end to end, and there was fire. Was there fire in 539 BC?
Well, verse 32 says they burned the marshes with fire.
Right, but that's my question. Was there fire in 539 BC when Medes and Persians, they went through underneath? And remember what Cyrus says? There wasn't even a battle. There was peace. So it seems to me that wouldn't really fit with what he's saying here. Okay, well, we'll keep looking at it. Let's just keep looking. Because we're about to run out of time. And let's see, I'll have to select. Let's look at, Mark, why don't you read 47 through 49.
Therefore, behold, days are coming when I will punish the idols of Babylon, and her whole land will be put to shame, and all her slain will fall in her midst. Then heaven and earth and all that is in them will shout for joy over Babylon, for the destroyers will come to her from the north, declares the Lord. Indeed, Babylon is to fall for the slain of Israel, as also for Babylon, the slain of all the earth have fallen.
Go ahead and read 18:20.
1820, rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, because God has pronounced judgment for you against her.
So that parallels with 48. And why are they rejoicing? What's happening in 47?
Mhm. Punished.
They've been punished, right?
Mhm.
And all their slain will fall in their midst. This is Babylon. Has this occurred? Has this occurred in Revelation? When are they going to shout in Revelation? 18,
Yeah, and chapter 19, really.
and 19 also, if you want to go ahead and read it. Yeah, I just didn't want to. I was trying to save a little time, but absolutely.
Yeah. Hallelujah, salvation and glory and power belong to God, because his judgments are true and righteous, for he has judged the great harlot who is corrupting the earth with her immorality, and he's avenged the blood of his bondservants on her. And for a second time they said, hallelujah, her smoke rises up forever and ever. And so
Okay. So Addison, can I get you to read 61 through 64? We'll finish up.
Okay, so the 61 to 64.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Zechariah.
So is it Jeremiah 50?
51, chapter 51, verses 61 through 64.
Okay, sorry, I was in the wrong book actually. Then Jeremiah said to Sariah, as soon as you come to Babylon, then see that you read all these words aloud, and say, you, O Lord, have promised concerning this place to cut it off, so that there will be nothing dwelling in it, whether man or beast, but it will be a perpetual desolation. And as soon as you finish reading the scroll, you will tie a stone to it and throw it into the middle of the Euphrates, and say, just so shall Babylon sink down and not rise again, because of the calamity that I am going to bring upon her, and they will become exhausted. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah.
Okay, so how does that correlate with what we've seen? We actually talked about it earlier, verse 64. That's a description, a prophetic description of Babylon in Jeremiah's day. Does that correlate with a description of Babylon, another place which also has the name Babylon in Revelation 17, 18? 1821, go ahead and read 1821 more.
then a strong angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, so will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer.
Okay. You see the parallel? You see the parallel between those? And
Yes.
then also in verse 62, what's going to be the state of Babylon according to verse 62?
Perpetual desolation.
Has that occurred?
No.
Has that occurred?
Not
Has
yet.
that been fulfilled?
So verse 64, if we are saying Babylon has to be rebuilt, that is going against verse 64, which says it will not rise again.
Mhm.
So shall
Yeah,
Babylon sink down and not rise again. Well,
That depends when she sinks down.
that's what I was
Yeah.
getting ready to say. When does she sink
It's
down?
It's like the millstone.
Which is at what time in her history as a city?
At the end.
At the very end. And she
But
will
there
not
is-
rise, and she will not rise again.
But is there a
Mhm.
Babylon on earth today?
Yes.
Yes.
Where?
There is.
Sodom in Babylon. Saddam Hussein actually built a palace there.
Yeah, but have you seen it?
I've got, there's pictures of it. I don't know if I can share my screen, but they
Okay,
have
I'm gonna-
rebuilt the Ishtar Gate. They've rebuilt some of the walls.
Yeah, but it's not a city. There's nobody
Oh
living
no, it's
there.
not. It's not inhabited. No, it's a world, whatever it is.
Okay,
heritage.
well, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do Zechariah. It's a hard task. which I probably didn't want to do because it's a strange passage, but I will just, I'm going to read the last section about the ephah. There's a woman in an ephah, and she's going to be taken from Israel with wickedness in her, and she's going to be taken to a place called Shinar to build a temple. I mean, just that alone, what does that remind you of? Where's Shinar? Where would this woman with wickedness, where would they be taking her? Back to where? What's Shinar?
It's the lands of
Babel was being
That's where it all began, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a prophecy which has not been fulfilled. It's going to build her a temple in the land of Shinar. Now, we have a lot of time to talk about that, but that's basically what it says. I've got on the screen right now, not going to look through them all. I've summarized all or most of the ones we've looked at, similarities between Jeremiah and Revelation. If Jeremiah is speaking about a literal city, then we've got quite an interesting list of similarities in Revelation, which is named Babylon. Then that raises the question, is it Babylon? Is that what he means? Let me just do one more here. We didn't talk about no stone from Babylon will be used to rebuild. Here's 51:26. They will not take from you even a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but you will be desolate forever. Catch that. Desolate forever. They won't ever take a stone. Has this been fulfilled? You're going to receive my answer there. It has not. Archaeological findings have these bricks all over Hela and other places in that vicinity. I mean, they're prized possessions. The ruins of the original Babylonian palace have been plundered. Okay, we're gonna skip Zechariah. We're gonna skip that. So I'm gonna take liberty now in the category of for what it's worth. Because the question that we're trying to establish is Babylon. Let me ask it this way. Let me ask two things. Does God mean what he says and says what he means?
Yeah.
Okay. That's one thing. Nobody would disagree with that. So I forgot my second question now. It'll come back to me. But I want to trying to remember the question. I can't remember what it was now. All right, so let's go ahead and I just want to make some observations about this area of the Middle East. It's got 60% of the world's oil, because if what we looked at, if these prophecies of Jeremiah, have not been fulfilled, and not all of them talk about it, but no stone being rebuilt. There has to come a day when you can't use a stone from Babylon to rebuild. That hasn't happened. That simply hasn't happened. There has to come a day when Babylon is not inhabitable, simply because there are demons and hyenas. And like Chris said, some funny birds, unclean birds, right? So I'm just trying to make the point that there are a lot of things which have not been fulfilled that will have to be fulfilled if God's word means what it says and says what it means. So I mean, yeah, obviously what I'm implying, what am I implying? If I came to you in 1937 and I said, there's no way Israel's going to be a nation. No way. What would what would a lot of people have said?
So
Yeah, it's not going to happen. what does it, but there were a large number of people who did believe it. And what does it take to believe something that's not seen?
Faith.
Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Is there going to be a temple in the time of Daniel's 70th week, the last 7 years? Is there going to be a temple? What does that take to believe that? Faith,
Faith.
right? Now, I'm just putting the points on a graph for you and saying, if Babylon, many of the prophecies that Jeremiah has echoed and are paralleled in the Revelation have not been fulfilled, it implies fairly strongly that there has to be a literal Babylon, just like there has to be a literal temple, just like Israel had to be a literal Israel. Now that one we already know about. So I want to just throw you some thoughts about it to keep in the back of your mind. Oil's in the Middle East. 60% of the oil is in this area. How fast could things be built with oil money? Because somebody would say it could not be rebuilt fast enough. But look at the amount of oil they could control Babylon. If Babylon took over in this area and annexed these other oil deposits, they would control, guess what? The world's commerce. Chapter 18, the world's economy. And then look at little Dubai. Little country, wasn't anything back in the 50s. You know, what happens? They discover oil. And then what happens? Within a few years, look at these pictures. I had to show you this one. This is my favorite. Playing tennis. Look at where they're playing tennis. Way up on top of this thing. I don't know what happens when you hit a ball off the edge. Who's gonna get the ball? This is money, guys. Oil money. These things went up fast, really fast. I'm just trying to make a case for at least possibly this could happen. I mean, let me give you another example. You say, well, it's not, now it's a new age. What about an old age? How about this fire? Anybody remember the Great Chicago Fire? I hope not, because none of it's that old, right, David? You and I are not that old.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Chris?
It was the cow that knocked over the lantern and took it all out.
Yeah, he took it all out. So there it is. Do you know how long it took them in 1871 and actually in 72, 70, how long it took them to rebuild the city?
Not long.
2 years. 2 years.
Not long at all.
That's all. You see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah.
Now I want to take you to Google Earth. And I want to show you Google Earth. I got real excited. Yeah, these are ruins. I get that. They're ruins of Babylon. We're up close now. Let me drop back a little bit. Watch what happens as we drop back. Okay, here we're dropping back. Right in here. I have trouble seeing it. I think it's yeah, right in here. I'm losing a little bit, but there's the Ishtar Gate.
Yep.
Okay. And you're already beginning to pick up. What does that look like? Cows?
City.
Look like city. I'm going to drop back a little bit more. This is on Google Earth. I didn't make this stuff up, guys. I got real excited when I saw these things the other day. Okay, here's the ruins of Babylon. Look right there. You know, there's still some of them there. Look at the city on the northeast. Look at the city south. Look at the city up. I didn't point out here. And you've got Hilah, which is 500,000 people right in this area. You've got the Ishtar Gate. This is Jewish believer Joel Rosenberg wrote in the Jerusalem Post, 2022 is Babylon once again rising from the ashes. Here's his statement. There's growing evidence that the Iraqi government is serious about rebuilding this ancient wonder of the world. So I think that the evidence is, at least when you tie this with the passages of prophecy in Jeremiah, some of which you might argue with a little bit, but if you look at 13 of them and you look at whether there's similarities with John's description, could it be that the description of Babylon in Jeremiah is a description of Babylon, which is a literal Babylon? It just hasn't come on the scene yet. See, it's people scratching their head a little bit, but I mean, hold that thought, look at the passages and look and see what they say will come to pass. And if it hasn't come to pass, the question is, does it have to come to pass? God said it, right? If God said it, he meant it. It has to come to pass. So I'm just going to jump down to this last passage to apply some of this, because it's past time. I don't want to go past anymore. But 2 Timothy 4:8, because we don't want to be looking for Babylon. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for Jesus. In the future, there's laid up a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. Loved his appearing, looking for Jesus, not looking for the Antichrist, wanting more and more, in fact, to less and less love this world, which I call Babylon. Okay. Keep one eye toward the sky, because Jesus may come very, very soon. So I want to show you, though, in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9, a verse that popped into my mind as we think about a literal Babylon being rebuilt. Solomon writes, and that which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there's nothing new under the sun. So my contention, I'll go ahead and say it. I mean, I'm supposed to be a facilitator, but I think the evidence that demands a verdict is that Babylon's a real city, that it really will be rebuilt, and it could be built very fast because they've got a lot of money and they want to rebuild it. That picture from the Ishtar Gate is the UNESCO, it was something with UNESCO, that they're trying to get this thing going again. I'll say this, keep your eye on Iraq. I mean, keep your eye on Jesus, but keep your eye on Iraq. If they begin to build something, I'm going to get really excited. Really excited. So, okay, well, that's pretty much the end of the lesson. This is probably one of the harder lessons I've ever